I mean, think about it. Ava could have chosen any other band that was out there, but this focus on U2, one of the greatest rock bands in history, speaks to the idea that, you know, the African American community is not a monolith. Okay, there are people who enjoy different types of music, and not everything has to be jazz, funk, or hip hop. You know, people can really enjoy their lives by encompassing themselves in different cultural aspects of music, theater, and the arts. So it was kind of neat to see her really have this affinity for this rock band from, you know, the United Kingdom. Now the film takes place over the course of one day, and as the story moves from the morning to night, the transitions from the house being full to the emptying of the house, you know, kind of align with the pace at which May is not really wanting to let go. You know, you kind of sense this passive aggressiveness that she just really doesn't want to leave, and I think that's the brilliance in DuVernay's storytelling and the direction of the film. It reminds us how hard it is to say goodbye and to move on. What worked in this movie, I thought, was everything. Everything just seemed to flow perfectly. There was anything that I felt kind of hindered the movie at all. It's rated TV-14 because there's no cursing, there's no sex, there's no violence, there's nothing. Okay, it's very, very easy to watch, and it's a great film to watch with your family, I think, especially if you're going through something similar like this when it comes to saying goodbye to a loved one. As far as IMDb goes, IMDb gave it a strong, very solid 6.0. Rotten Tomatoes gave it a smoking 82%, and the audience score was a very strong 66. When it comes to my wonderful Aristotle index, there was nothing I thought that was I guess you could say, unconvincing possibility, except for the fact that Troy, Omari Hardwick, I don't know how many, you know, tow truck guys look that attractive. Towing trucks. I mean, towing vehicles and things of that nature. Not that I'm knocking tow truck guys, but man, when he stepped out of the truck, I was like, okay, I'm pretty sure every woman in the audience is like, he can come move my stuff whenever he wants to. I just didn't see, what? You know what? Let me just stop. Let me just stop. All right. As far as, the movie itself, my rating for it, I gave it a very strong 4 out of 5. As a director, DuVernay directs with precision and expertise and focuses on the little things that really make sure they add up to a great movie. I thought I Will Follow had great potential, but it does become a little bit syrupy at certain points and a little bit cliche at others. Sally Richardson Whitfield had a great performance as the lead. It's something I really haven't seen her too much of in, I guess, but she was great as the lead and the focal point of this movie. And it was nice to see a movie about something that we all have to deal with at one point in time in our lives, whether it be sooner or later. Now, when it comes to a movie like this, I don't think anybody needs a cocktail, okay? I think this is the kind of movie where you need red wine, okay? And for this particular film, I'm going to make the suggestion for the Apothic Red series. Now, I've suggested wines before in the past, and I've kind of stayed away from certain kinds of brands. But for this one, I think this is definitely an Apothic Red kind of movie. Now, as far as the Apothic series goes, you can get Apothic Red, you can get Apothic Crush, Apothic Rose, Apothic Dark, Apothic White. So there are different varietals of the Apothic series, but this is definitely the kind of movie where you want to just have a glass of wine and just sit back and enjoy it. After a day like the one May had, with this whole moving thing and dealing with her cousin and dealing with Omari, I'm pretty sure she just wanted to sit down on her couch and have a glass of wine and think about her next move. And also ponder who she will follow, but more importantly, who will follow her. If you had a chance to do it all over again, where would you stop the play button on your life? Like, think about that just for a second. At what moment in your life where you know the direction that you're about to take is going to affect everything that you do moving forward, where would you stop and say, you know what, instead of turning right, I'm going to turn left? That's an interesting thought process. I mean, because when you start thinking about the number of things that have occurred through your own lifetime, you wonder, will you ever have an opportunity to have a second chance? Is there a second act or possibly a third act to everything that you do? And to me, that's what this film is all about. Second chances, hope, and getting a second or potentially third act in life to live out your dreams and your hopes and all of your realities. Now, the film focuses on an ex-con who is struggling to readjust to life in a kind of small town and kind of builds this very, very intense relationship with his former history teacher. But thematically, the chance to start over again, I think, is the center point or the focal point of this particular film. Now, it stars Edie Falco, who's got 66 credits to her name. You may have seen her in a quick flash moment in Copland at the very, very beginning of the movie. You may have seen her on Law and Order. Did not know that she was in Oz, that prison drama on HBO, but she was great in The Land of Steady Habits, and she's going to be in the new Avatars that are coming out in the next, I guess you could say, 3 to 5 years as well. But when it comes to Edie Falco, let's be real, okay? She is one of two people. She is either Nurse Jackie or she is Carmela Soprano. And as far as I'm concerned, she is Carmela Soprano. Now, Jay Duplass, he's more of a, I guess you could say, a producer instead of an actor. Okay, he and his brother Mark Duplass, who I reviewed in the film called The One That I Love, they're kind of like this brother, writer, director, producer kind of tandem team. And he was in Beatrice's Dinner. He was also in that TV series called Transparent, and he's most recently popped in that film called Horse Girl. Caitlin Dever plays Hildy, and she's got 34 credits to her name. She was in the TV series Justified. She was also in Last Man Standing. And you know what? What's really cool was I play video games, okay? And she was one of the voices in Uncharted 4, which is going to be becoming a movie pretty soon. Now, the other character in this, Ben Schwartz, plays Ted, and he's done a lot of TV. We're talking like Undercovers, House of Lies. He's in Parks and Recreation. He's also in that TV series called Space Force. And so, he's been around. I'm not going to say there's anything that really, I guess you could say, stands out about him. But when you see him, you're like, oh, yeah, I recognize that guy. So, again, another solid cast of actors who I think bring different types of perspectives to the roles that they all play. Now, as Carol goes, which is played by Edie Falco, she begins the movie not necessarily downtrodden, but life is kind of beating her up a little bit. She is stuck in a marriage that is really going nowhere. She has a completely unappreciative teenage daughter, and she has a job, let's be honest, as a teacher that doesn't really have a lot of perks. But she seems to have found salvation in working on cases as an advocate. Throughout the movie, you can see that there's this new Carol, or this burgeoning Carol inside that's trying to fight the way to get out, but she just can't make that final push to break free and begin anew. And when she finally does, I do believe that it is a very gratifying experience to kind of see her become what she is hoping to be. Jay plays Chris, and at the beginning of the movie, he's very, very awkward. So awkward to the point that when he gets out of jail, the first thing he does at his own party is that he throws up all over the place. Not all over everybody, but like in the bathroom. And so you could tell this guy is just a nervous wreck. But we quickly learn of his affinity for Carol, and he decides to make a run at it, and his fearlessness, I thought, was only matched by his naivete, okay, because he's still kind of like this. He's been in jail for 20 years, and so he kind of acts like this 18-year-old, but he's in the body of a 38-year-old. And, as he starts to kind of understand where his role is and matures and gets his legs under him, he kind of figures things out. And so his transformation, his change is one where it goes from this teenage boy who is slowly becoming a man over the course of this movie. And you're not quite sure he's a man just yet, but he's understanding, I guess you could say, what his role is and what his responsibilities are going to be moving forward. Caitlin Dever plays Hildy, which is the teenage daughter, and she represents just, complete teenage angst in full glory. She's detached, resentful of her parents' loveless marriage. She doesn't really want to even be involved with her mom. And again, this is this whole kind of issue between mother and daughter, okay? And she kind of resents her dad, but I guess she deals with the fact that, he's her dad. And she also, too, is trying to find herself. And she has this kind of weird connection with Chris as they're both seemingly trying to fit in, because Hildy also kind of feels like an outcast. And that's where she identifies with Chris, at least on that particular level. Ben plays the brother, another awkward character at first. Not quite sure, how to relate to his brother since he's been in jail for 20 years. But, he does try to explain himself in the latter parts of the movie. Now, the guilt for what happened is definitely there, but it doesn't really rise to the surface until later on. So where that initial guilt is hidden, his remorse kind of helps activate that forgiveness, and that kind of brings him around. But I can't really say that his character changed very much either. I guess most of these characters, the only real change in the characters revolves around Edie Falco's character, I guess. The rest of them kind of remain the same with a little, adjustments here or there. Now, as far as the dialogue goes in this movie, the conversations all seem to be very, very real and very, very authentic. I thought that Falco and Duplass did an incredible job of bringing the words to life, allowing their skills and their abilities to convey the point of each scene. And while and I guess what I mean by that is over time, you're watching it and you find yourself hanging on the words, on their every single word, trying to figure out what's going to happen next. Like, where are they going to go with this? Because you're looking at it and you're realizing what's happening and you're like, oh boy, are they really going to do this? And what's going to happen? What I did find amazing, though, and I don't want to get too far onto a soapbox about this, is that there's one particular scene where one of the characters uses the word retarded. And it is quickly pointed out how, between a couple of characters, how the word retarded is not, used anymore. I'm not supposed to use that word anymore. And I find it amazing that we have the ability to retire the word retarded. And we can retire, I guess you could say, the F word when it comes to homosexuality. But we still can't seem to seemingly retire the N word. It's just a bone I got to pick, I guess. I'm not trying to be that guy who's always bringing this up, but I was like, wow, even in this movie, when the guy just simply says something that, it's a faux pas. Remember, he's been in jail for 20 years, but he slips up and says it, and he's immediately corrected. And I'm thinking to myself, why can't we do the same thing with the N word? Like, why can't we retire this word? But you know what? Let me just go ahead and move on. Now, what makes this movie great is there's conflicts throughout. Okay, movie is rich with conflicts, and that's what makes, to me, I think, a great film. Chris versus himself. Chris is trying to find himself and fit back into society. He's looking for a job and trying to fit in with his friends. Chris versus the environment around him. He's dealing with the job market, parole, doing community service, the local scene with friends. He can't drink. He can't do this. Carol versus herself. She's trying to get the nerve up to kind of start her life anew, and she wants so much more in life, but she seems to be trapped by these circumstances, and she's looking for a way out. Hildy versus Carol. Hey, classic mother-daughter friction that, again, I've talked about this in the last film review, not even going to try to get into. Hildy versus the environment. Hildy, as a daughter, does not seem to fit in anywhere with people her age. And she spends a lot of time alone trying to figure things out. Like, she's a loner. And then last but not least, Carol versus her marriage. She is trapped by an impotent man who really doesn't seem to want anything from her, just kind of wants to kind of keep going through life. And the two are caught in this rut of relationships, and she still has needs emotionally, physically, and psychologically. So there's a lot of stuff going on in this. So I think that's what kind of draws you into the authenticity of the movie, that even in our own lives, we kind of suffer from these same kinds of things always happening and swirling around us. Now, as far as the plot type goes, I thought this was just kind of like a rite of passage movie. Only real experience of Chris going through these issues are going to help bring him through this process of change. And he's really trying to get his life back together again. And everybody knows what happened to him on that night before he got sent to jail. And the guilt kind of mutes their interaction with Chris. And he has to navigate this minefield about who really feels bad for him and who's just trying to move on as he tries to reconcile